Hi, good evening and welcome. I'm going to open this, my third fireside chat, by telling you I've been thinking a lot recently about a man named Moses Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn lived in Germany in the mid-18th century and is considered the first modern Jew and the father of the Jewish Enlightenment. He wanted to open secular culture, learning, and life to Jews who knew only Judaism and who were pretty much cut off from the rest of the world. He didn't want Jews to live a sequestered life, cut off from all of society. So Mendelssohn believed that Jews should be a part of general society and that we should leave our practice of Judaism to our private lives. He's often credited with having said, "A Jew should be a man in the street and a Jew at home." A man in the street and a Jew at home. And although I've never been a fan of Mendelssohn or of his philosophy, I've been thinking about Mendelssohn's comment. At a time when no one is going in the street, and a time when we're stuck at home, what would he say now? To be a Jew at home? And what about the street? One of the reasons I reject Mendelssohn's philosophy is because Judaism has so much to teach, so much to offer about how we should interact with the world. We shouldn't leave the wisdom of our traditions or our heritage behind when we walk out the door. An example of how our wisdom is pertinent and can be applied and is appreciated even by non-Jews is of the actress Julia Roberts, who in an Instagram post recently said that one way to look at quarantining and social distancing is to think about how Jews celebrate Shabbat. She went on and told the Chicago Tribune that instead of thinking about restrictions as being negative, she referred to all the things that Jews who observe Shabbat do not do. She said they don't exchange money, they don't drive a car, they don't work, none of these things. And then she says it could be a spiritual discipline that is a source of beauty, a source of the holy, as opposed to just being a pain in the tuchus. She actually didn't use the Yiddish word for tuchus, but you know what I mean. She quoted a poem called Pandemic, written by a Jewish poet, Lynn Unger, and it goes like this. What have you thought of it as most Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times, a time to cease from travel, from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is, sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life, center down, and when your body has become still, reach out with your heart, know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out instead your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we shall live. The poem Pandemic by Lynn Unger, recently written. All of this is wonderful advice. Think of this as one long extended Shabbat. But in reality, the truth is, it's anything but Shabbat. Because as so many tell me, including myself, people are busier than ever. And so instead I want to offer a different, what I think might even be a better piece of advice and a suggestion. When this all will be behind us, and believe me, one day it will be, I urge you to realize you can set aside time not to be engaged in the everyday busyness of our lives. We can set aside a time, a day, one day a week. If we learn nothing else, let us learn that we can set aside one day a week to give thanks, to disconnect from technology and from work, to connect instead with our family, with our heritage, with our community, with our ancestors, and with God. It's called Shabbat. Another insight I want to share with you from our Jewish tradition is to understand the importance of learning to live with the internal contradictions of paradoxes. We strive to be connected while maintaining our distance during this difficult time. We strive to be present to others while knowing that physical contact can be fatal. We are alone, solitary, confined to our homes, and yet we are united in a way that has never happened before. The whole world is truly in this together. And so it is a time of great contrasts and of paradoxes. Judaism is a religion that embraces contrast. There's the famous Hasidic teaching which says you should always carry two pieces of paper in your pocket. One of them should say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, the world was created for me. And the other one should say, I am but dust and ashes. So the contrast between those two. Or when Hillel said, Im ein ani limili, if I'm only for myself, what am I? Ukisha ani lima'ani, but if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And so those contrasts that we feel of being connected yet distant, present to others while not having any physical contact, alone and solitary yet united, in certain respects evoke for me the Passover story. The Passover story also has its shares of contradictions. Take, for example, the matzah that we eat on Passover. Matzah, we call and refer to it as lechem oni, the bread of poverty, the bread of our affliction. And that's because we eat the matzah when we were slaves in Egypt. It was our daily diet. And yet, we're also told that we eat it because in our haste to depart from Egypt, it didn't have time to rise. And therefore, it symbolizes our freedom, our redemption. So the question for us to consider this Passover is, which is it? Is it that which frees us, or is that which binds us to the past, and that which we ate when we were slaves? And speaking of Passover, which will be with us next week, a time of family gatherings, a time of being together, a time of telling our story, a time when we will, unlike other times, every other year, we will be spread out. We won't be able to sit together around the table. But thanks to modern technology, we will be able to be connected. And part of that story is that we leave Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, which in Hebrew is the Hebrew word for Egypt, comes from the word tsar. Tsar means straits or narrow. And part of the word tsaro, which means narrow or narrowness, is to remind us, then teach us, that we begin our story from a lowly place as slaves, but we come out the other end, liberated as a free people. Our story has truly inspired many throughout the ages, whether it's Jews in difficult circumstances or even non-Jews throughout the world. And so I couldn't help but think, as I mentioned in the workshop I did the other night, how fascinating it is that at the very end of the Seder, we proclaim B'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. I'm struck by the fact that we spend an entire night telling our story and emphasizing our past, what happened to us previously. We recount and we recall and our story and our history, and then we conclude with these eternal words, next year in Jerusalem. Words which speak not about the past, but not even about the present, but rather about the future. And so I think there's a message there for us as well this year, and that is we should be inspired by those who came before us. They certainly knew dark times. They certainly experienced great tragedy and adversity, and they somehow were able to look to the future with optimism and with great hope. I came across something by a rabbi named Rabbi Akiva Eger, who in the summer of 1831 was experiencing with his community the second of 5 cholera pandemics to strike during the 19th century. This was the advice in the 1830s that Rabbi Eger gave, quote, regarding prayer in the synagogue, in my view, it is truly not right to congregate in a tight space. It is, however, possible to pray in small groups. So he tells his community, be together of about 15 or so, starting from the evening prayers in the morning and the evening. Say some of the prayers of the Psalms of your choice. Mention His Majesty the King and all who dwell in His land. He alludes to certain passages to recite, and then he says make sure that no more than the aforementioned number of people squeeze in. And you might even need to post a policeman to be sure there are no more than that number. Then he goes on and he gives other advice. He says the following, quote, protect yourselves from the cold. Everyone should wear a flannel cloth around their waist. Do not eat bad foods, especially pickles. Limit the eating of fruit and fish and the drinking of beer. And do not overeat. It's better to eat small quantities frequently. Then he goes on to say, stay clean. Do not leave dirt and grime in your house. Keep your house clean. Change into clean, freshly laundered clothes several times a week, which was unusual in those days. Do not be anxious. Keep away from nervousness. Do not walk in the city's air at night, in the afternoon while the sun is shining. It is good to walk in the country to get fresh air. Open windows in the morning so that air can enter the rooms of your home. Do not leave home on an empty stomach. Eat some mustard seed on an empty stomach and take some oak bark. Draw some water. Wash your hands frequently and your face in the morning several times. Drizzle some good strong vinegar mixed with rose water in the rooms. And that's his advice from the 1830s. Some of it, obviously, is still applicable today, including about laundering our clothes, including about washing ourselves. But perhaps most of all, in addition to the dietetic advice he gives, not to be anxious, to keep away from nervousness. And so as we find ourselves confined to this particular situation, confined to our homes and our devices, I conclude with a prayer. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'amidenu malkenu l'chaim. Help us, O God, so that we will lie down in peace and awaken us to life on the morrow. Ufros alenu sukat shlomecha, spread over us the protecting shelter and tabernacle of your peace. Protect us from pestilence, from plagues and destruction. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. Guard our coming and our going. Avinu malkenu makor chayim, O source of life. May you who brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm bring a swift and steady end to the plague spreading across the globe. Send your divine gift of healing to all those who are stricken. Grant a refuah shlema, a complete and full and speedy healing of body and soul to those who are afflicted and to those who are suffering. Spread your enduring love and reward the kindness of those who perform daily tasks and daily miracles, those who are truly your partners and messengers of the divine. The medical personnel and our teachers, the grocery and delivery workers, those who are volunteers and our sanitation crews, all who bring healing, help, and hope. Grant us love, compassion, strength, and patience in these trying times, and bring consolation to those who are grieving, to those who are alone. May we have faith, O God, to know that we will soon see the light of hope, the light of healing. Baruch atah Adonai, shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. Praise are you, O Lord, eternal guardian of your people Israel. And with that, we hope and pray that these words bring you some comfort, and that with your loved ones, we know that eventually this time will be beyond us and behind us. And to those who want to know why the rabbi said not to eat pickles, I don't know. But nevertheless, we take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy Passover, to you and your family and your loved ones. Shalom.